Welcome to Unapologetically Yours, a podcast where we go deep on everything from spirituality to relationships and connection to business and belief systems. Because in a world where we've been taught to play by the rules, it's time to live unapologetically. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Unapologetically Yours podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Logan, and today we are talking about entrepreneurship. I created this podcast in an effort to shine a light on what it means to be a whole person, especially for women when we are tasked with so many roles and wear different hats. And for me, those hats look like mother, business owner, and also I'm deeply spiritual and creative, and entrepreneurship has been a really incredible tool for me to not only express myself, but also to build something that I deeply believe in. And so I founded Yakkety Yak, a content marketing agency based in Chicago 10 years ago. So as we celebrate 10 years in business, I'm reflecting on all of the many lessons that I have learned over the course of running this whole thing. And let me tell you, there have been ups and downs. There have been seasons of great prosperity, and there's been seasons of great drought. It's a journey that's not for the faint of heart, but also starting something that you believe in and building something that is yours is so deeply, deeply rewarding. So I thought I would go through today a list of the 10 biggest lessons that I have learned as an entrepreneur over the last 10 years. So here we go. In this list, I'm not going to hold back. So I'll share some real stories about why I learned those lessons and go deep on what made them so important. So if you're thinking about starting your own business or you're currently running a business, then maybe you can learn from some of my pitfalls and the opportunities that have come from them. So number one on the list is that culture is everything. I can't emphasize that enough. Culture is everything. So me, born in the 80s and coming of age in the 90s and 2000s, one of the messages that were served to me was that, you work hard. So for me, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and that was modeled to me in a way of getting up early, being the first person at the office, proving yourself. And so what was interesting to me in building Yakkety Yak is that I knew that I wanted deeply aligned people with the mission and what we're trying to do. And to give you a little bit of background, Yakkety Yak is a content marketing agency. So we provide everything from websites, social media, branding, content, video production, podcast creation for brands and businesses that care about making the world a little bit better. And so attracting people who were committed to that mission was so important. But culture is not just about who you hire. It's about how you show up in the world, doing things together as a team, giving back, creating a place where you can joke, speak freely, support one another. And in the beginning, my drive and my ambition and working late and all of those things that have been instilled in me are something that I value deeply within my team, and ultimately inadvertently created a culture that was pretty stressful for people to work in. And some of the things that we did to change that was really developing, we created a culture club, we created give back opportunities. We made sure that we were trying to come together as like normal people. There we were creating a space to listen to one another, to share our grievances, to share our opportunities, to share our wins, and to celebrate the work that we had done. And because when you work in an agency, it's easy to just like keep going on to the next thing because there's just this endless cycle of work to be done. And if you don't take the time to celebrate, then it can become really defeating or feel tiring. And I will say that culture is something that is ongoing. As a company grows, you've got to pay attention to culture, and as it contracts, you've got to pay attention to culture. And as we have shifted from being fully remote as of 2024, which gave us an opportunity to have more freedom to hire people outside of the state of Illinois and out of the Chicagoland area, meant that we had to be super intentional about creating those opportunities for people to see themselves within the company. It's a work in progress. It's something that needs constant time and attention. And one of the key important things of that is listening to your people and the feedback that they're providing from what's important to them from a benefit standpoint, from what's important to them from a work-life balance standpoint. And so for me, early on, I would send emails at night because that worked for me. Being a mother of little kids, I would, oftentimes end my workday around 4 and then pick it back up around 8 p.m. and might work until midnight. And so blasting emails at that time of night made my team feel like they needed to be on too. So easy solutions that we created were like, hey, instead of sending emails at night, just schedule them so they're there in the morning so that people can manage their own time. Other things that we implemented were a flexible schedule so that people could, clock out early if they had to go pick up their kids, or have the ability to make their appointment with their therapist where they're probably talking about me, and have a chance to take care of their whole selves while being part of the Yakkety Yak team. I think that the feedback that I've received over the years from different team members, it's something that you've got to walk a fine line, because you want to create a culture that you can sustain, create a business that you can sustain. But the things you are able to implement, like flexible work hours, or flexible vacation policy, all of those things make a really big difference in making people feel seen and supported. But speaking from experience, it's also something that you can't take your foot off the gas from. So if you do make a big change in the company, then it's important that you counterbalance that with a benefit from a culture standpoint. So culture is everything. Making people feel seen, supported, heard is one of the most valuable things that you can do to create a strong foundation where people want to stick around. And it's probably also one of the hardest things to do. Number 2 on my list is that core values are absolutely key for hiring. After going through a period of time where we had a lot of turnover and also some level of misalignment with existing employees, we got really serious about what our core values are. And they are curious, authentic, accountable, collaborative, and kind. So we not only use those core values as a hiring mechanism, but we also use them as a way to monitor employee performance, and so that we are held accountable to those things. But here's what's so important when it comes to recruiting people is that there is a element of unconscious bias that comes from a regular application process. And so using core values as a metric in hiring helps you make sure that you're bringing in people who are aligned with the vision of the organization and who are on the same page from a commitment standpoint, while also eliminating some of those unconscious biases. And I have to tell you that it's also really important in performance reviews to be consistent and to think about those core values. For example, we added kind as one of our values because we wanted to make sure that we were creating a respectful environment for our team. And so that if someone was maybe using a tone that wasn't super appropriate with other people, that we could hold them accountable for that. But core values don't just apply towards your team and recruiting, they also apply to your client relationships. So finding clients that align with those core values is something that really enhances the overall direction of an organization. And so working with so many nonprofit organizations like we do, that really tugs on the heartstrings of our super aligned team, because they know that they're creating, they're working towards making the world a little bit better, and knowing that that is something that is deeply important to every member of our staff is a really, really cool thing, and honestly contributes very deeply to the culture of the organization. So the key factor there. Highly recommend, if you haven't established core values for your organization, that you do, and make sure that they are something that are actionable and something that you also live by and abide by, to just uphold a standard for your business that that is sustainable and goes outside of just like standard KPIs and outputs and all of those elements. This is a really big one. The third is that role clarity is absolutely vital. This is something that I think that a lot of organizations face when they're going from being smaller and scrappy to a little bit larger. If people don't know what they're supposed to be doing, or they're wearing many hats, it's really hard to prioritize. It's also very hard to, from a leadership standpoint, to hold people accountable if there are more than one person doing the same thing, or there's not clear handoffs. So with this, we definitely went through that transition. So in early 2021, I acquired a video production agency that I love dearly. They were called Kindred Content, and now they're Yakkety Yak. But with that, we already had an existing video team. We also had people in varying roles. And then as our team grew, we had to get really specific about like, okay, who's a producer, who's an editor? And then we applied all of those things down to all of our different departments, so we could be clear about like who's creating and who's reviewing, who's talking to clients, and who's doing X, Y, and Z. And so one of the best tools that we had for this is, instead of creating an org chart, it's called an accountability chart. And so we implemented the EOS system, the Entrepreneur's Operating System. Kudos to Gino Whitman for creating the Traction program that was really vital in our growth over the years. And so with this accountability chart, you have like these specific boxes, and you just have to make sure that no one is sharing a box. So you have that clear accountability and the clarity around who is doing what, because if everyone's doing everything, then no one's doing nothing, or it just gets really, really confusing to praise people, to check in on just how things are going, and to also like measure your own profitability as a business. Okay, so those are some tactical pieces. The fourth is to take a break, to just take a break. It is so easy as an entrepreneur to just keep going. And when you have payrolls that you're carrying, when you have overhead, when you have all of the pieces, there's always something that you could be doing to improve. There's always something that you could be doing. There's always something that could be taken off of your plate. And the to-do list is pretty vast, and it gets so easy to get sucked in to that. I know. So let's see, started Yakkety Yak in 2014 is when I hired my first employee and went full time with the business. I had previously been doing Yakkety Yak, and then was freelancing at the Sun Times, and also working in another agency. And then stepping into, having this be my full livelihood was a really big deal. And I got obsessed because, again, same thing of like, there's always stuff to do. There's always payroll to run. There's a million things. And in 2016, I had my first child. And I remember, oh my gosh, so many things, so many lessons learned there. But opening my office space, and I'm hauling a breast pump to and from work, and nursing in between calls at home. And I was working or mothering around the clock. And then throw in another baby on top of that, and then another baby. It gets really easy to forget about your own needs as a whole person, to make time for exercise, to make time for reflection. And so in the 7 habits of highly effective people, one of the most important ones, I believe, is to take time to sharpen the saw. You have to step away if you want to have perspective and clarity and all of the things. And unless you create that space intentionally, then not only are you modeling not taking a break for your team, but also it becomes just deeply, deeply difficult to recharge and to have a fresh perspective. And those are some really, really interesting years, having little babies while running this business. And I think that I lost some sense of self and lost sort of sight about like what's important to me and what am I doing here and what is this all for? Because at the end of the day, building a business is incredible, but it's not everything. You build it so you can live a life that you want to live, so you can take the vacation you want to take, so you can have that intentional time with your family. And one of the moments when I started to be like, oh, geez, I need to reevaluate. I was like, right when I had opened my first office downtown Chicago, I had a little baby, and I was trying to make everything work with working, pumping, conference calls, client needs, all this. And they didn't have a designated space where I could pump. And so I asked the office manager if she could convert one of the bathrooms to like a nursing room, a mother's room. So she put a sign on the door, and it actually turned out that this was in an effort to block it for me, but it turned out that this was like the poo bathroom. So all of the dudes, I say dudes because it was all the dudes on this particular floor would use this nursing room to go poop. And so I'm trying to navigate early motherhood. I'm operating on no sleep. I have, a team of, I think 5 or 6 people at the time. And I'm waiting outside of the poo bathroom for someone to finish up before I can go in and pump. And I think that was one of those moments where, like, as I'm sitting on the bathroom floor in someone's leftover doo-doo and asking myself, like, what am I doing? I'm stretched so thin. I'm, trying to make all this work, and realize that it was really important for me to take a step back and give myself a little bit more grace. And because, at the end of the day, the weight that we carry as moms, the weight that we carry as entrepreneurs can be so heavy. And if I didn't have my mom friends at that time and didn't have an ability to recharge my battery by taking walks, I think I would have gone absolutely mental. It was imperfect. And I've got a million more examples of like that over the years. But in hindsight, I would have been a lot stronger, a lot more been able to communicate better and would have been a stronger leader had I given myself even more grace. If I had just slept a little bit instead of working and knowing that I could delegate more than maybe I was at the time. So taking a break is just vital, whether that means getting together with other entrepreneurs or like-minded people, or signing up for a painting class, or doing something to create that space for you to reflect, sharpen the saw, and remembering that like you aren't just your business, you aren't you're more than that. And it probably would have helped with more of my personal relationships as well. But also, recognizing that building a business is super hard work and it takes a lot of time, and you've got to be so intentional about prioritizing that time in those relationships. Along those same lines, number 5 is find yourself a great mentor. I have an incredible mentor. His name is Bruce Taylor, and shout out to you, Bruce. He and I were matched through, I'm a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO Chicago. It's an international business community. It is just has been one of the biggest influences in my life, because I joined this group and I was suddenly like, oh my gosh, these people know what it's like to balance family and work and a payroll and vision and all of the things that are required to be an entrepreneur. So we automatically spoke the same language. And so through this group, I joined a forum, and a forum is, in this case, it was a group of other entrepreneurs with non-competing businesses. And we committed to getting together every single month to go deep on everything from what's happening in our personal lives, what's happening in our family lives, what's happening in our businesses, and share and offer solutions for one another. And that in itself was just such a gift. And I was mentored by my peers through that process, and they became some of the closest people in my life. And then an additional benefit is that they had this match program with another group called YPO, the Young Presidents Organization. And so I was matched with Bruce, I think 4 or 5 years ago. And we have continued to meet every single month and share about what's going on in my business, and have become really great friends. But also to have someone who can look at you and hold you accountable and say, okay, let's take a look at those financials. Let's dig into this issue that you've been having, and someone, a consistent presence who's a neutral party who can give you guidance and help get you on track is just so valuable. And I think that this can look like a lot of different things for different people. This can be getting together with a small group of other women business owners, or this can look like just finding someone that you're super comfortable with sharing. But the key to a successful mentoring relationship is vulnerability, is being honest about your fears, be honest about your limitations, be honest about what is holding you back, and be honest about your ideas and what you have in mind for the future. Because it's a lonely road as an entrepreneur. It can feel, they say lonely at the top, but it's true. I can't go to my producer, Laura, and tell her all the darkest secrets about what I'm worried about in my business and expect her to be happy and productive and not take on those worries herself. Or she's got her own shit to worry about. So, at the end of the day, I'm laughing because Laura is sitting right here. But the truth is that I don't want to say misery loves company, but we need an outlet of people who understand what we're going through and can have those shared experiences and shared resources, because it's impossible to have all the answers alone. And that mentorship from other peers is really invaluable. And I want to take a step even forward with that and say that I am also a mentor to other business owners. And so paying it forward is incredible. And I learned so much from my mentee. And that's the other thing, that when you think about, like, oh my gosh, opportunities of learning come from all around you. So not just from a formal mentorship relationship, but also from looking at what other people are doing, learning from their mistakes, learning from your team, taking feedback to heart and going from there. But especially important is to having an outlet outside of work where you can share what's going on and exchange information, and also just feel that camaraderie and feel that support and feel that level of like, okay, someone else gets it. It's really important. If any of you listening out there are starting a business or running your own business and you don't feel like you have that support, please call me, because I love to listen. I love to share and would love to go in the trenches with you, because I know what it's like. And for the first several years of my business, I didn't have that. It wasn't until 2019 when I joined EO. And so at that point I was, 5 years in and had already made a whole bunch of mistakes that maybe could have been avoided had I had some more partners in what I was doing, mentally, emotionally, and et cetera. Getting back to culture, number 6 on my list is be relentless in your pursuit of alignment with clients. This is so important from a core value standpoint. This is so important from a productivity standpoint. Being clear about who you want to work with and how you want to serve them is really vital. And there's been times over the years where I've prioritized taking money from misaligned clients and over, our core values. And those are mistakes that I would never make again. I have taken the liberty of terminating relationships with our clients that were causing burnout on my team or too stressful, or just generally the work wasn't aligned with where we're going as a business. And it takes courage to do that. It takes courage to walk away from bird in hand revenue. But at the end of the day, when your team sees you standing up for them and standing up for what's important to you as an organization, it really speaks volumes. But it's not just about like not working with assholes, which is definitely one of my requirements of being a Yakkety Yak client. You're not a dick, but also making sure that you're clear on the type of client that you want to serve. So I think it was roughly around 2018, 2019 when Yakkety Yak shifted from being an agency that would work with anyone to being an agency that focused on purpose-driven brands and businesses. And that to us made all the difference in attracting those types of clients and being really clear about like, yes, this is who we want to work with. And that could look like a lot of different things. That could look like a business that is, a corporation that has a very aligned corporate giving policy or has a similar culture to ours, or it could be a national nonprofit organization, or it could be a startup. But ultimately, that commitment to making the world a better place is a foundational element of who we will work with. And it is ever evolving. It's still a challenge. Sometimes someone will come to me with a really cool opportunity and I'll have to say, I don't know that this fits with our business model and where we're going. But also being clear about who we want to attract has also brought us some really incredible clients that have enhanced our business, that have allowed us to grow and allowed us to do bigger things, greater things in the world. So one of the exercises that you can do is, just get really clear on your target audience. What does that person look like? What are they interested in? What are their hobbies? And actually writing it down and then getting really clear and when maybe someone isn't, and making an intentional choice about working with them or not. 7. I got to credit this to Miss Brene Brown. Brene Brown changed my life and probably the life of members of my team when I read about painting done. Okay, so a little about me. Neurodivergent, ADHD, and I am a manifesting generator. which means in human design. Check out one of the earlier episodes of the podcast to learn more about what that is. But as a manifesting generator, I am operating, I'm working on multiple projects at one time. I'm a time bender. I move at 100 miles an hour, and then throw in ADD on top of that. And I have I can even like start a sentence and then walk away, and not even know that I did it. So getting direction from me blows. I'm sorry, team. I'm sorry, people that work at Yakkety Yak who have to get direction from me, because sometimes it can be unclear. But painting done is one of the greatest ways to solve that. So let me give you some background. Painting done means when you get direction from someone and you might be unclear, like every person can, beauty of like an art project. Every person can have the same assignment, go paint a tree, and every person will come back with a tree that looks completely different. So when you say to someone, go create this, that outcome could look completely different depending on who you're talking to and what experiences they bring to the table and what their background is and what their skills are. So by asking the question, paint done, it gets you to the finish line. What does finished look like? What does the end result look like? So that you can narrow the difference between differing views and differing interpretations of a task at hand. So if there is confusion around something that someone is assigning or a project that's being kicked off, one of the best things you can ask as an employee or contractor or anyone on the receiving end of this is, can you paint done for me? And that will help to eliminate some of those critical questions and help make sure that you're on the same page. It's a game changer. So number 8 is that you will have to let go of good people. This is like the hardest lesson. I'll talk a little bit about some of the cultural challenges that we went through as an organization, really right around the time, like through the pandemic and into through the acquisition of Kindred Content. So to give you an idea of where I was in 2020, I was running a business in a blue state that, while pregnant, and so when, in March 2020, all of those things are true. So trying to navigate like my own health as a mother-to-be, the health and well-being of my team and my staff, who were, we're all navigating a pandemic for the first time together, and trying to figure it out. We had some issues with a couple of misaligned employees in the year prior, and it's really tough because when you bring someone on your team, everyone wants it to work. You want it to work. And sometimes it just doesn't. And that could be because of skill set. That could be because of values. That could be because they're a fucking dick. And in some cases, it's a little easier to let someone go. I had the pleasure early on in one of my, when I was starting the business, to work with an incredible leader. His name's Scott Peterson of Carver Peterson Consulting. And he provided sales training, leadership development, and his own consulting company. And so I got to write a huge amount of his content and learn directly from him. And one of the things that he shared was about like the 4 tenets of an employee. And in terms like you have a and the risk that they pose for your organization. You have a peak performer. That's someone who's culturally aligned and doing a great job. You have a misaligned underachiever. Easy to cut bait with someone who doesn't fit culturally and isn't doing their job. Then there is a misaligned achiever. I'm getting the name of this wrong, but basically someone who is good at their job, but culturally misaligned. So this could be someone who is a dick to everyone but meets their quota. And then there's another category of person, and that is someone who's they're culturally aligned, but missing the mark when it comes to performance. And the hardest ones to let go of are those misaligned achievers. They're the ones who are, like I said, getting the work done, helping advance your business, but might be creating a toxic environment for other people. And so I let one of those people sit at Yakkety Yak for far too long. And it really tainted the waters of the company in terms of what was acceptable and what was not. Like, there was a whole group of people for a period of time who were just like constantly G-chatting amongst themselves. And I didn't log into their accounts to need to know that. It's very obvious when you're in a meeting and someone is side-eyeing and chatting ferociously every time you open your mouth. Very challenging as a young leader to navigate. Like, okay, so what do you do? How do you stop this kind of permeation of negative energy in a business? And so I think this person at one point, and I have full accountability for the fact that I should have let them go sooner. But like, I walked up to her while she was eating her lunch. She basically told me to get fucked because I interrupted her. I was like, okay. But I'm also someone who, I work through lunch because that's what's normal to me. So in any event, I'm saying all of this because now we're at the pandemic time and that person had moved on, but there was still sort of this, a little bit of a culture of just negativity. And I had my youngest son, on May 23rd, 2020, and George Floyd was murdered on May 25th. And I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old at home. And suddenly my team was, most of them who lived in downtown Chicago, some living in a studio apartment with their partners, trying to navigate work from home amidst race riots and cultural strife. And it was an extremely overwhelming time. And I remember getting home from the hospital and I'm trying to navigate all of the things that come with being brand new mother, and also trying to navigate what was happening at work and answering to my team about like, what are our priorities when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how were we going to navigate things like going back to the office and vaccinations and all of those pieces when, doing that as a whole person, as a mom, as a person experiencing the pandemic and my own relationships and my own fears, and then also as a business leader, was probably one of the most challenging times of my life. And I did everything that I could to both listen, implement new policies, and navigate that in acquisition, and do all of this with as much integrity as possible. But still, some of those seeds had sort of been planted around, toxicity in the workplace. Some of those relationships were probably unsalvageable, and we had experienced, I think, like 65% turnover by the end of 2021, which is like devastating for a small business. A couple of key things came out of that. One, like striking a balance between like my own intuition and my own values as a leader and knowing what is true, and then also growth opportunities and thinking about, well, what can we do to be a better business? How can we make sure that we are not perpetuating a culture where something like what happened to George Floyd could happen again? How are we making sure that we are building a workplace that doesn't have unconscious bias in hiring and all of those things. And knowing also that like the resources that I had at the time were limited. I didn't have outside investors. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have any of those things. And in hindsight, I would have. But after going through this experience where it was really, really, really dark and challenging, and we're also growing. So we had like our best year at that time too. It was just a lot, and we had to clean up after that. We knew that that in order to grow and get to the next phase of Yakkety Yak, so we can make the impact in the world that we wanted to, that we were going to have to do things a little bit differently. And that's when we rolled out some of those practices of like making sure to hire for core values and to make sure that we weren't perpetuating culture of burnout and that we're listening to our team. And let me tell you that there's so much to be learned from this next generation of worker. And I'm really grateful for it. Like, for example, not working so late, setting healthy boundaries between work-life balance, making it okay to take a therapy appointment during the middle of the day. All of those things came as a result of listening to this generation of workers. And that said, the next wave of the team that we had was my absolute favorite. Incredibly aligned. We brought in some of the most talented people that we had ever had in, at this point, almost 10 years of business. And we had followed all of our best practices with the accountability charts, and everyone was doing the work, and it was very clear. But having taken my foot off the gas from a sales standpoint, because that's also a hat that I wear, at some point we had to make choices because our revenue wasn't able to sustain this level of workforce that we had cultivated as a result of really high turnover. And so that's one of the things that will just gut you as a business owner, is knowing that at some point you have to make a decision between the future of the business and the present. And sometimes that means having to optimize your staff or cut positions to outsource to third parties so that you can maintain and run as a healthy organization. And so one of the other deeply challenging chapters of Yakkety Yak was making the decision that we were going to that we wanted to be able to ride the wave of the economy and ride the wave of our clients' growth, and by leaning on a model where we brought on more contractors and trusted providers instead of having a larger staff. And that meant breaking up the band. And there are people that I had to part ways with that I think about every single day and desperately wish that they were still part of the team, because they were amazing. And, but also, and for me, it's hard for me to just say like, oh, it's just business, because it's not. It's intensely personal. When someone trusts you with their employment, they're trusting you with their livelihood. They're trusting you that they are going to show up every day and have a job and get their paycheck. And that's not a trust that I've ever taken lightly. But as a small business owner, there comes a point when it's like, okay, how much risk can I assume? How much can I take on financially and otherwise, and still maintain the rest of the business and maintain the future of the business? And that's it. You will have to let go of good people, and it sucks. And the best thing that you can do is try to maintain those relationships, try to stay in touch with people, and hopefully there'll be a moment in time when your paths may cross again. But those are the real heartbreaks, and one of the things that I've learned along the way. And it won't just be that that you let go of them; they will leave you And that's a whole nother thing to deal with. And people come and go, and it's brutal. The people part of running a business is, it's the hardest. Number 9, I've said this before and I will say it again. Burnout is not the answer. Burnout is not the answer. If you are running yourself ragged, if you have a task list that is so long that you're losing sleep, or you're working, 50, 60-hour weeks, it's not the answer. It's time to take a step back and to delegate and to find people to support you in what you're doing, because life is short and burnout can show up in so many different ways. I think that there's nothing that carries such a weight as financial stress. And as a business owner, you carry that weight. You're the one who's responsible for payroll. In some cases, in my case, I'm the one who is personally guaranteed any loan or any credit card that we've taken on. And that is, that can create in itself just this need to keep producing. But taking a step back and delegating, prioritizing, refining your business so that you're not running yourself ragged is the only answer. It is, I believe, the way to have a healthier team. I believe it's a way to have a healthier perspective about what you're doing in the world. And I can't look at my team and tell them to have the same intensity as I have about the business and to work overtime and put their personal lives on the line. Why would I expect that of myself? And there have been so many moments where I've had to, and this is just a given, like you have to lean in to your business when it needs you. You also have to know when to lean out and to lean back into your personal life. And I think that that's one of the biggest lies that were served around business itself, is that we have to keep growing, we have to keep producing, we have to do all of these things and meet the marks, meet the deadlines, meet this. We get to choose how we set up our business, and we can set it up in a way that is more easeful, that's more intentional. And part of that, it feels counterintuitive when you're in a state of like, oh my God, I need to make payroll, to actually take a step back and think about, okay, what's working? What's not working? Where are there opportunities that I'm missing? And give yourself space to make those choices in a way that doesn't jeopardize your health, your relationships with your children. All of those things are really important. In the last episode of Unapologetically Yours, we had on Dr. Colleen Napleton, and she is an incredible entrepreneur and mother and also a child psychologist. And in our conversation, we talked about how her life has had to adjust. When she first started her business, she had a baby, and it's a little bit easier, believe it or not, to work around the clock when you have a baby. And then when your kids get older, they start to really notice and they start to need you in different ways and need your presence. And so for me, as my kids started getting older, I realized like, no, I got to be home. I've got to be available to them. I can't be on my phone while I'm trying to make dinner. I can't be, I need to prioritize them. And it's been a huge shift for me to be able to, turn off work at the end of the day, and it's off. Thanks, Gen Z. You guys are an inspiration. But truly, the burnout isn't worth it. The compromising of your relationships, it isn't worth it, because life is meant to be lived. We are humans, and we are designed for joy, pleasure, connection, all of those things. And making space for it is really vital. And so if you are in a season of intensity, make sure that you are gut checking yourself about when that season is going to come to an end, so that it doesn't become a pattern or a way of life. And for all of you starting businesses, you've got to lean in, you've got to lean out. Hard work is required, but also hard joy is required, and making time for yourself and your family members. It's just so important. Number 10 on the list is that no one will care as much as you. And it's true. And it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. No, it's not a bad thing. You are the one who started the business. You're the one who's got insight into all aspects of the organization and its financial state. You're the most dedicated to its performance and all of that. So when you're bringing on a team, giving them grace to know that, like, yes, it's important to them, but it's not the end of the world. You're allowed to have a different set of standards. And yes, you're the one whose ass is on the line and it's important for you to care. But giving your team the space to be their own whole ass people too is really, really important. I have made so many mistakes over the years. I've taken a huge amount of risk. I've built something pretty incredible. To be a woman-owned business in this day and age was consistently reached multi-seven figures in revenue puts me at a statistic that is I think it's like 2% or 0.02% of all business owners, and particularly women in business. It's been hard, and it has changed the fiber of my being. It has increased my appetite for risk. It has also, I've learned so much about myself. And I think that the willingness to grow through the changes and to take a step back and say, this isn't working, takes a lot of courage. And I'm here trying to make the world a better place. I haven't gotten it right. In fact, I think that there's probably a whole handful of people out there who would say that was the worst boss ever. And maybe I am. But the end of the day, building something takes heart. You leave so much on the table. And to do it from scratch while raising 3 small kids who I think I will never forget 2020 and 2021. I will never forget. Is something that I'm really, really proud of. And this podcast is for people who are trying to make the world a little bit better, who have dared to dream, to think outside the box. And so whether you are taking on a role with the PTO, or you're have a side hustle that you're running, or you're building a brand, what you're doing is going to make a mark in the world. You're going to touch people's lives. You're going to make mistakes. And the best thing that you can do is learn from them. I keep trying to recite this quote, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it's basically like, until we do the best we can, until we know better, and then we do better. So for me, as I've gotten more information, I've tried to adopt that and learn, and while also keeping my family safe, secure, protected, provided for. And like I said, I've oftentimes made mistakes, but if I can inspire one person to keep going, my message to you is this: keep going, keep learning. Don't let the voices of the naysayers stop you. Don't let the people leaving 1-star reviews on your podcast telling you that you are the sordid dictator. Don't let them get you down. There was a time when I used to be like possessed by the Glassdoor reviews that Yakkety Yak received. And now it's like, it's one of those things like, do something big, have courage, live in integrity, and live by your own core values, and the rest will fall into place. And when you are operating from a place that feels misaligned, or from a place of burnout, take a step back and reevaluate your priorities, and it will make all the difference. One of the things I've talked about in maybe one of the first or second episodes of Unapologetically Yours, is that, I was going, and I lost myself. It likely cost me my marriage, and cost me, a lot of risk that I put on my plate running the company, and it cost me my sense of self. So I stopped. I stopped with the burnout. I stopped with listening to other voices and started listening to myself and giving myself the space to reimagine what business would look like outside of the standard of hustle, outside of the standard of work, outside of the standard of growth, KPI, stern discipline, all of those things, and started to think about what would it look like to run a business as a whole person. And so these are some of the steps that helped get me there. And these are some of the lessons I learned. And I really sincerely mean it when I say that if you're out there trying to start something, again, whether it's something small or something big, I would love to support you in your mission and help you find that right balance so that you can not just be an entrepreneur, not just be a mom, not just be a parent, and not just be a wife, that you can be a whole ass person who endeavors to do things beyond their wildest dreams and make things happen in the world, because it just takes one person to make a difference, and that person could be you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Go out, make some mischief in the world. And until then, I'm Ashley, and I'm unapologetically yours.